For decades, Timothy Busfield was seen as one of Hollywood's steady, reliable names, an Emmy winner, a respected director, and a familiar face tied to classic films and prestige television. Someone trusted on set, someone parents felt comfortable around. But now, his name is being pulled into a case that few people expected and even fewer want to confront. According to authorities, allegations tied to a children's TV production have led to criminal charges that paint a very different picture of what may have been happening behind the scenes. Not at a late-night party, not off the radar, but on a working set, surrounded by crew, cameras, and kids just trying to do their jobs. The claims raise disturbing questions, not just about one man, but about how much really gets seen in environments that are supposed to be tightly controlled. And as more details surface, the story becomes less about celebrity and more about trust, access, and what might have gone unnoticed for years. Because this case didn't start with flashing lights or an arrest, it started quietly, with concerns that almost went nowhere. Before his name ever appeared in court documents, Timothy Busfield carried a reputation built over decades. He wasn't just another actor chasing roles. He was an Emmy winner, a working director, and someone studios trusted to manage both performances and people. From Field of Dreams to 30-something to The West Wing, his career gave him credibility that few questioned. That reputation followed him onto the set of The Cleaning Lady, where he joined the Fox series as a director. According to reports, this is where his relationship with two young actors began to stand out. Not because it seemed inappropriate at first, but because it appeared unusually close. Investigators say Busfield encouraged the children to call him Uncle Tim. On its own, the nickname didn't raise alarms. In fast-moving production environments, friendly dynamics aren't uncommon, especially when adults are trying to help child actors feel comfortable on set. To many around him, Busfield came off as warm, playful, and involved, the kind of presence parents are told to appreciate. The families reportedly socialized with him outside of work. There were gatherings, gifts, familiarity that blurred the line between professional and personal. And in an industry built on long hours and trust, that closeness didn't immediately stand out as a problem. But years later, that same nickname, Uncle Tim, would resurface in a way no one expected. And once it did, investigators began to look back at those early dynamics very differently. Because what seemed harmless at the start would later be re-examined under a much harsher light. The first real warning didn't come from a studio complaint or a public accusation. It came quietly, inside a hospital. In November 2024, police were called to the University of New Mexico Hospital after medical staff raised concerns about two child patients. According to court records, professionals there reportedly felt something about the situation wasn't right. Not based on a dramatic disclosure, but on patterns they believed could point to grooming behavior. When officers spoke with the children at that time, nothing concrete came out. The boys did not report any direct sexual contact during those initial conversations. What they did describe sounded, on the surface, far less serious. They said a man they knew from set, Uncle Tim, would tickle them on their stomachs and legs even when they didn't like it. That detail sat in an uncomfortable gray area. The behavior reportedly made the children uneasy, but it wasn't enough for authorities to move forward. Investigators determined the evidence didn't meet the threshold for charges at that point, and the case stalled almost as quickly as it started. From the outside, it looked like a dead end. No formal accusations, no arrest, no headlines, just a few notes in a report that never went anywhere. But cases like this don't always unfold all at once. Sometimes they sit quietly, waiting for the right moment, the right words, or the right person to finally speak up. And months later, that moment came. What changed the direction of the case wasn't a sudden discovery, it was time. Months after that initial hospital visit, new information reportedly began to surface through a very different setting. therapy sessions. According to police documents, one of the children later disclosed details that had never been shared with officers before. This time, the claims went beyond uncomfortable behavior. The child reportedly said that while on the set of The Cleaning Lady, Busfield touched him inappropriately over his clothing, including areas that crossed clear boundaries. Another disclosure suggested the behavior may have started years earlier, when the child was as young as 7. These statements didn't come all at once, and they didn't come easily. Reports suggest the disclosures emerged gradually during conversations meant to help the child process anxiety and fear. Investigators noted changes in behavior as well, increased distress, fear around the director, and signs that something had deeply unsettled him. According to the Warrant, one child allegedly explained that he didn't come forward sooner because Busfield was the director, someone in control, someone he feared might get angry, someone he didn't want to disappoint or be mean to. That hesitation became a critical detail for investigators, because in cases involving minors, delayed disclosure isn't uncommon, especially when authority, trust, and confusion are involved. By the time these new claims reached police, the situation no longer looked like a misunderstanding. It looked like a pattern that needed to be re-examined from the ground up. And that's when investigators stopped focusing only on the children and started asking how this could have happened in the first place. As investigators dug deeper, their focus widened beyond the allegations themselves. The question became harder and more uncomfortable. How could anything like this allegedly happen on a professional TV set filled with adults, crew members, and safeguards meant to protect children? According to statements included in the warrant, supervision on the set of The Cleaning Lady wasn't always consistent. A production assistant reportedly told police that one of the child actors would sometimes be left unsupervised, even though a special on-set teacher was assigned to monitor him. In one instance, the child was allegedly seen riding a skateboard through an active set, something that shouldn't have gone unnoticed. There were also claims about changes in how parents were allowed to monitor their children. The children's mother told investigators that earlier in production, parents were given iPads so they could watch their kids from another area during filming. But after Busfield joined the show, that system reportedly stopped. According to the affidavit, she claimed Busfield said parental monitoring like that wasn't standard and wasn't encouraged. To investigators, these details mattered. Film sets move fast, long hours, controlled chaos, and when routines change, especially ones involving oversight, gaps can open without anyone realizing it in the moment. Police also noted that several witnesses suggested Busfield may have had opportunities to be alone with one of the children, including time spent in a bedroom set during filming. Nothing about that was publicly questioned at the time, but in hindsight, it became a key part of the investigation. This wasn't just about one person's alleged actions anymore. It was about systems that may have failed, boundaries that may not have been enforced, and an environment where concerns could slip through unnoticed. And soon, investigators would confront Busfield and hear his side of the story. When investigators finally sat down with Timothy Busfield, his response didn't sound like a confession. It sounded like disbelief. According to the arrest warrant, Busfield told police he didn't remember any inappropriate incidents. He acknowledged that if physical contact happened, it would have been playful and never secretive. In his words, he said it wouldn't have been unusual for him to tickle or pick up children on set because he wanted to create a relaxed, friendly environment for young actors. He also emphasized that nothing inappropriate would have happened behind closed doors. Busfield reportedly said he was almost always around other people and that any interaction would have been visible to parents or crew members. From his perspective, there was no weird moment, no intentional crossing of lines. Busfield also offered an alternative explanation for why the allegations surfaced when they did. He suggested that children's parents were upset after their sons were not brought back for a new season of the show, claiming the accusations were driven by revenge rather than misconduct. According to police records, he said he'd even heard this theory echoed by someone else involved with the production. Around the same time, Warner Bros. Launched its own internal investigation. An outside firm was reportedly brought in to review the claims, interview witnesses, and examine what happened on set. The conclusion? The studio said the allegations could not be substantiated. To Busfield, that finding seemed to support his position, but for law enforcement, it wasn't the end of the story. Corporate investigations and criminal investigations operate under very different standards, and police weren't prepared to close the case based on studio conclusions alone. Because while Busfield denied wrongdoing, investigators were still piecing together timelines, witness statements, and past concerns. And that's when something else caught their attention. This wasn't the first time his name had surfaced in serious accusations. As investigators reviewed the case, they didn't just focus on what was recently reported, they also looked backward. According to the arrest warrant, Timothy Busfield had faced sexual misconduct accusations in the past, dating back to 1994 and again in 2012. In both instances, no charges were filed. The cases didn't move forward, and for years they remained largely out of public view. So why bring them up now? Legally, prior allegations aren't proof of wrongdoing, but in an investigation, they can still matter. Authorities often examine earlier claims to see whether there are patterns, similarities, or warning signs that were overlooked at the time. Not to declare guilt, but to understand context. In this case, police reportedly included those past accusations to explain why they took the new disclosures seriously, even though earlier concerns hadn't resulted in charges. From their perspective, it wasn't about reopening old cases. It was about determining whether the present allegations stood alone or fit into a longer, more troubling narrative. For Busfield, those earlier accusations had never defined his career. He continued working steadily in Hollywood, earning respect as both an actor and a director. To the public, his image remained intact, but to investigators, the existence of past claims combined with new disclosures, witness statements, and on-set concerns added weight to their decision to move forward this time. And that decision would soon lead to the most serious development yet, one that pushed the case fully into the public spotlight. As it stands right now, Timothy Busfield is facing serious charges tied to allegations involving minors, with an arrest warrant issued but no confirmed booking publicly recorded at the time of reporting. And that distinction matters. Allegations, no matter how disturbing, are not convictions. The legal process is still unfolding, and Busfield has denied intentional wrongdoing. At the same time, the details laid out by investigators raise difficult questions that go beyond one individual. Questions about how much access is too much, about how easily authority and familiarity can blur boundaries, and about whether the systems designed to protect children on professional sets are actually strong enough when no one thinks to look too closely. This case has also reignited a broader conversation about delayed disclosures, how children often struggle to speak up, especially when the person involved holds power, influence, or trust. What may look like silence from the outside can in reality be fear, confusion, or a desire not to cause trouble. For now, the courtroom will determine what happens next. Evidence will be challenged, testimony will be weighed, and the truth, whatever it ultimately is, will have to stand up to scrutiny. But regardless of the outcome, the case leaves behind an unsettling reminder. In environments built on trust and fast-moving routines, the most important safeguards are the ones that never get relaxed. And sometimes, the stories that shock us most aren't the ones that come out suddenly, they're the ones that take years to be heard.